Hey, what's going on? Aaron Murray here with the Players Lounge, and I'm going to be talking with Matt Stinchcomb today, former All-American at the University of Georgia, going to be on the call for G-Day here in a couple of days. We talk about the quarterback matchup. We talk about guys on the defensive side of the football, and then get Matt's favorite moment from G-Day during his time there in Athens. And don't forget, Salty MF, go get your gear right now. Click the link below, 15% off. Use the promo code TPL2023. Let's have some fun. First off, what thoughts about the new dog? I mean, Q, are you little? Is this a bad omen starting the season off when we lose the dog that's been the winningest dog in Georgia history?
I don't know if it's a bad omen. That was a heck of a dog, though. I mean, he had quite the run. We were actually talking about who was that? What was that farm dog that we had that wasn't even an all-white English bulldog? Like, what was his name? Russ or something? What was the one that we had that, like, we had a quick change, right? And we ended up having to swap dogs out. And there was like some dog we got off a farm somewhere. And you're going, he didn't have a great record. What was his name? Anyway.
Was it during my tenure?
Was it Russ? No, gosh, no. It wasn't during the dog we had when I was there, when we were, dominating the old Peach Bowl. Before it was a playoff game, he was an ornery cuss of a dog. I mean, that dog that's the famous picture of when he's trying to bite Robert Baker, because Robert Baker, one, because he was an Auburn guy, although it's fun to pretend like it was, because he reached out and touched Charles Seiler, who's, the handler's their dog, the Seiler family's dog. As soon as Robert Baker touched Charles, that dog launched, and he was out for blood for sure. That was not like hey, let's play. That was I'm going to detach some parts from you. That dog was awesome in that regard, but he'd ride the bus with us, and he didn't try to pet him, that's for sure. But
give me your top 3 live mascots in college football.
Well, let's do top 4, because we know who number 1 is.
Okay, let's do number 1. I guess 1.
Yeah. Okay. It used to be, I used to think that Mike the Tiger, when they would bring him into the venue, that was one of the coolest things ever. I mean, to bring an apex predator onto the field with the team, that's a big deal. They don't do that anymore, though. I think he stayed like in his enclosure or something, and that was cool. So I'm gonna just in memory of the way they used to do it, Mike the Tiger's number 2. What's the cow's name at Texas?
Bevo? Is it Bevo?
Bebo or yeah,
Bevo.
Yes.
Bevo.
He's got big horns. It's a big animal. He went after Uga a couple years ago. Yeah. So, give him credit. And then the Colorado one, the Ralphie, who, as I learned, is actually a female buffalo. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's an odd name for a female buffalo.
Has it always been a female buffalo?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It does seem like that would make more sense, maybe just because, I don't know what happens to male buffaloes in the fall. Maybe that's like I don't know if they go into rut or something like a deer does, but I wouldn't want to be wrestling a male, like a bull buffalo, onto a football field. And that's gone wrong a couple of times on those guys that are like, that have those sticks or whatever those things are that are supposed to direct where a buffalo wants to go. It's a miracle that ever even works out.
Well, didn't they fall? I mean, it was a year or 2 ago. The whole thing kind of fell over during the run. Yeah, it's quite entertaining. Yeah,
I think that was that's where is that the Conestoga wagon or whatever they have at Oklahoma?
No, that was Oklahoma, actually. I think that was
that
Oklahoma.
Thing flipped over on them. Well, I mean, the turning radius, as we know, on those wagons are not great. I mean, it's just it's really kind of abysmal. I don't know how they ever park them, but that thing flipped. What's Renegade at Florida State? That's pretty cool. The horse.
Yeah.
I feel like it's got to be a big animal. Some of the smaller ones are Uga's like of the smaller scale mascots. Uga's like the only one that I think is redeemable. There's not a lot of live mascots out there anymore when you think about it.
Now you had Smokey at Tennessee. Um, mm,
Yeah,
yeah, he's not bad.
he's not
Make sure
bad.
in the chat, give your favorite. If you're watching us on YouTube, give your favorite mascot. So Stinch and I, here's our top four: Uga, Mike the Tiger, especially when he got to roam the Tiger Stadium,
Yeah.
Bevo, and Colorado's Buffalo.
This is
Ralphie. It's pretty good.
I'll say this, Murray. Did y'all ever play? Did y'all play in Baton Rouge?
No, I never played in Baton Rouge. I never played in Tuscaloosa.
I never played in Tuscaloosa either. I never played in Tuscaloosa or Arkansas. We did get to play at Baton Rouge though at night, and they won't like hearing this, and maybe this is why they don't bring him in there anymore. I think they were goosing that tiger because they would bring him in that cage behind where you're warming up and park that cage like right there where you're doing, get off or whatever. And that tiger would I think given his own devices, he would probably just lay in the cage. But it looked to me like one of those handlers dressed like a cheerleader or something. I think he had, I don't know if it was a prod or something, but I think he was goosing that tiger to get him to whatever, growl or whatever they do. And you could hear that sucker. So you're trying to warm up, and behind you is a tiger in a cage, 5 yards away, 10 yards away. That's genius. I mean, you talk about a distraction. And they're over there. They had to have been goosing that thing.
Oh yeah.
Which is probably why they don't bring them in there anymore. They're probably like, I'm sure the animal rights people or whoever are going, maybe you don't goose the tiger. But it was one heck of an experience, that's for sure. You talk about waking you up in pregame.
Yeah, for those who have never been to Baton Rouge either on that campus for LSU, his whole environment in which he lives in is absolutely incredible. And I didn't realize this, but like tigers are, which is not to me not a really good mascot, I guess. They're more like lone animals. They're not really, they're not like a pack of wolves. They're kind of their own stuff. They're beautiful, but they don't like to mess with other animals. They don't like to mess with other tigers. It's kind of like, here, this is my space. Everyone else stay away from me, which is really not the definition of teamwork, which is interesting why it's such a popular name for sports.
That's a good point. I never thought about
opposite
that.
of teamwork. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
None of those cats. Well, I'll tell you what. This will be something else for your listeners. They should go on YouTube and look for. I don't know what would be a good way to search it, but like the Mike the Tiger Whisperer. There was a couple of guys that would go to that enclosure, and that cat would follow. It was an LSU fan or whatever supporter, and this guy would like hide behind the pillar, and then he would turn around, and Mike would hunt this person. Like he would get down in like a crouch, like in the savannas of wherever, and would then run and pounce and jump over that water and slam into the plexiglass trying to get this Mike the Tiger Whisperer. There's tons of clips on YouTube. And this is happening in the enclosure that's right outside of the stadium, which is just kind of crazy. It's like a circus.
Wild. It is the complete circus. All right. Well, let's get to G-Day and the excitement on that. Before we kind of break down the game a little bit, because there's a lot of big topics of, the quarterbacks and new receivers, offensive line positions that have to be filled, a couple of positions on defense. I mean, there's a lot going on. I think Georgia's in a good spot, but obviously there's some question marks that need to be answered and the fans kind of want to see on Saturday. But give me your favorite memory, because I love G-Day, but my boy T-Bob, who I do a show with too, says I love G-Day because I can't get hit. So it's like a free game for me just to kind of go out there and throw the ball around. He's like, you're not actually hitting people. For the big boys up front, it's not like here's a fun day of 7-on-7 football. We actually have to hit each other a little bit. So is G-Day pointless? Because I know that's been a big topic. And then give me your favorite memory too of did you enjoy it? Did you not?
I would say so. The most interesting memory I had was, I want to say after my freshman year. Is that right? Maybe not. No, it was after my sophomore year. They had the Olympics, soccer was played in Sanford Stadium, and I can't remember if they were still putting the hedges back in or something. Anyway, we didn't have G-Day in the stadium. We had it at Clark Central High School in Athens. That was cool. I thought that was a lot of fun just because, Clark Central's it's one of the more accomplished. If it wasn't for Valdosta in the state of Georgia, Clark's a really accomplished high school football program. And it's a cool stadium to play in. It's kind of down in that valley and that low spot. And so that was kind of fun. You're out of high school, but you're playing in a high school stadium, and it felt more full. Because this is before, the advent of what Kirby and a lot of these other programs have been able to establish, which is this sellout crowds at spring games. So that was like a cool memory. It was just a different way of getting at it. And that was, I think that was after the 96 season. So that was interesting. No, I hated spring practice. Practicing for anything other than a game as a lineman, it's just not fun. People go out and play catch and throw the football around, and that's a real kick in the pants. But nobody goes out in the yard and does like one-on-one run blocking or 9-on-7. It's just not a pastime. So if there's not like
an offensive line even fun then? Like did you enjoy it? Like, or was it just like, I'm just so big I have to play this position and I'm really good at it? Like, is it even fun playing offensive line?
It is. It is fun. Okay. It's fun. And the operative word there is playing. It's fun to play offensive line. It's not fun to practice offensive line. It's just, there's not a drill where you're like, hey, ask any offensive lineman what their favorite drill was, and then wait for them to lie to you. Because if they come up with an answer that's, oh yeah, I really enjoyed, no, you didn't. You didn't enjoy any of them. You're lying. They're not fun. Almost all of them are geared for you to fail. Offensive line coaches love for you to fail. Even when you succeed, they find some small way that you failed. It's like, well, but your step was 7 inches, and I said it needed to be 4. And you're like, but the guy's on his back. Yeah, but you didn't step right. So that's, 2 points off. So there's just you don't enjoy practicing that position. There are guys like to run routes and jump and catch and that sort of thing. And we are literally, even the stuff that we do, where do you practice? Oh, they're over there where the cages are. The cage? That's right. Yeah, they're over there in the cage. The chutes. They treat us like animals. Literally.
Yeah, I agree. Shame on those coaches. We offensive linemen need more love from everyone out there. Give the O linemen hugs on campus when you see them. They need it more than anyone else on the football team. All right. So you're on the call for the game. I know that has to be pretty exciting and obviously very convenient to drive there. Your boy has to go to Arkansas this weekend, and then I'm off to LSU the following weekend to go see Mike the Tiger. So it'll be fun.
Sweet.
But what's that?
That's awesome, man. Those are two. Yeah. Hey, Dixon Street. There's worse places to spend time.
Dude, I'm gonna be there on Friday. Arkansas, one of the top teams in the country in baseball. Gonna go catch an Arkansas baseball game. Maybe I'll catch an LSU baseball game next week if they're home. I haven't checked the schedule, but it's always fun. It's just fun to be on these SEC campuses in the spring. The weather's great. There's not a ton of pressure. Your team's gonna win the day, so there's really no sad people at all. Just everyone's happy, jolly, excited to be in those college football stadiums. But I want to get into some of these big position battles at Georgia. We'll start with the quarterback one first. And finally, Stetson's gone. So there's going to be a lot of happy fans out there that the former walk-on is finally run out of eligibility. And now we can really see these 4- and 5-star guys battle it out. It's impressive. The 3 guys are impressive. Where do you see this thing shaking out? And depending on what we see Saturday, is in your mind, is that really a decision maker? Like if one guy just plays way better than the other two, is that going to determine who's going to be the starting quarterback, or is this thing, in your opinion, long from over?
I think it's long from over, and I think that's actually true. I think now a lot of times these programs, if they're smart, and a lot of them are, some of them aren't, they make it seem as if it's far from over because of the portal. And I think that we'll see, another wave of activity transfers after some of these spring practice sessions where, depending on what the practices that actually matter, how things went, how the reps were divided, et cetera. Even last year we did the Ole Miss spring game, and Lane was very intentional, I think, in how he handled that position and making sure that it looked as if, is it going to be Luke Altmaier? Is it going to be the Dart kid? Even the way he handled the first couple of weeks of the season to make sure that guys, stick it out. I think that's actually going to be genuine in this instance. I think that at Georgia, it will be far from settled. And I think if there is a hallmark of Georgia's football program and approach to personnel and playing time under Kirby, it's that jobs are open, competition continues, there are no sacred cows. So we might think something going into a season, we might continue to think it, but our minds can be changed, and they can be changed by how you play, player X, Y, Z. And specifically at the quarterback spot. And then, it's now been, thoroughly documented that they didn't want Stetson Bennett to be the answer for a long time. And Stetson Bennett insisted that, no, I think I am the answer, and I'm going to stick this out until folks can see that I actually am the guy for the job. But that was, you think about the DeJuan Mathis and, JT Daniel, and then JT Daniel again. Right, he gets injured, comes back, and Stetson's kind of floating in and out of that lineup, and all the while, he was the right answer. So they're not scared to make different decisions at quarterback. Carson Beck, it was long said, a couple of seasons ago, was going to be the starter going into UAB, and whatever happened that week that happened ends up being Stetson Bennett, and the rest is, literally history on how that season played out the rest of the way in. I think that because of that, there's not going to be any finality from this game. Now, we might see some things that are interesting, but I've long since said, you've seen plenty of these too, right? Where the spring games, there might not be a worse barometer for how that team is going to be in the fall than a spring game. They're still important because it's fun. It's a reason for these guys to get amped up to play in front of the fans and get a game day type environment and atmosphere, especially with all the early enrollees and new entrants like a Ra Thomas or a Dominic Lovett. What do they look like in uniform? What do they look like in this stadium, and how do they interact with their teammates, et cetera? Schematically, are we going to learn a ton? Probably not. And are we certainly going to see, depth charts solidify? I don't think so. But we'll at least get a good look at some of these players that are the next up. And, receiver and outside linebacker are the two probably biggest question marks outside of quarterback. I think on that team right now, you point to left tackle. But I think they're going to be just fine. I just don't think there's going to be a ton of concrete answers that are going to come out of this thing on Saturday.
Speaking of the receivers, obviously new coordinator, our boy Bobo, calling plays again, and you get a couple big time transfers. So you covered the SEC. I'm sure you have at some point covered Ra and Lovett at Missouri and Mississippi State. Now bringing them over, knowing Bobo's history of you used the personnel you got, and Monken did a great job. A lot of 12 personnel, 13 personnel. You got Washington and Bowers. It's kind of hard not to put those guys in the game. But now all of a sudden you got the transfer receivers, you got Arians, you got McConkey, you got a quarterback that if it is Carson that can throw it all over the ballpark. Do you think this offense is completely different when it comes to the use of personnel this year? Or do you think Bobo is still going to kind of play in that world of bigger tight ends? You got some young freshman tight end that's playing well. You got Oscar, who played a lot towards the end of the season. Obviously, you got Bowers. How do you see the dynamics of personnel changing?
Yeah, I will say, from the big tight end standpoint, there are no Darnells on this roster anymore. There's no Darnells on any other roster, incidentally, including Sundays. So that's that's just kind of a different deal. That's going to be really tricky to replicate. I don't think they'll even seek to do it. But, we saw it a lot last year, a lot of 13 that didn't look like 13 personnel, right? You got 3 tight ends out there, but it's not like they're attached and one's kind of hipped off at the end of the line of scrimmage. That's, they're spread out. I mean, they might be in a bunch set, detached from the core of the offense. And personnel wise, it's 3 big tight ends in there, but it looks like it's, a 4 wide receiver set or something. So I think that from watching Mike, even through the years, what he's been great at is finding a way to feature a player. What's been different and will be different this year, I think, for him is, at least based on his more recent experience, is that there's so many different players that you can feature. And I think Monken did a really good job of finding ways to spread the ball around. And even to the point where, we did 3 of their games last year, and he was talking about, it's hard to get Big O, Darnell. It's hard to get him the ball because every time I have to try to get him the ball, that means I can't give it to some of these other guys. I mean, some of these other more explosive playmakers. So I think Mike will be able to handle that no problem. Now it's just the difference here is based on his more recent experiences is that he's got a lot more to work with. When you think about the 1 year that he had at South Carolina, and he's able to take what should have been a pedestrian rushing attack and produce, the conference's top rusher. That's not an easy thing to do, and it was with smoke and mirrors, right? So he's been able to do that repeatedly in a bunch of different places, and he's been able to do it at Georgia. So, and in this conference, and I don't have any concerns about how he's going to be able to deploy personnel that he hasn't had the luxury of working with in any of his more recent stops. It'll be interesting to see how that wide receiver room develops. And the hard part, the tricky part here, the real, I think, kind of free radical in all of this is, like you pointed out earlier, this is the first season in what feels like a long time where despite the different faces we've had at quarterback, you've also always had a guy that was a Heisman candidate, an eventual Heisman candidate in your quarterback room who's not there anymore. So that security blanket, which is the security blanket that became the centerpiece, isn't there anymore. So it's not an easy comparison, I think, to in college in general, year over year, because the personnel turns over. But now it's also the first time in a couple of seasons where it really is going to have to be a new face at quarterback. And there is no going back to the familiar face because the familiar face isn't there anymore.
A lot of new. I will say this one thing, though. I want to flip to the defense real quick before we let you go. I'm excited for this defense. Like, you lose Jalen, you lose Chris Smith and Keeley on the back end, but I mean, you got Malachi back, you got Javon back, you got Lassiter back, you have 2 middle linebackers back. They've done such a great job of building depth in the interior and the outside linebacking spot. They're young, but there's plenty of talent there. This has been one of the best defenses in the country the past 2 years. Probably the best defense in the country the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Is it crazy to think that this defense this year could be the best of all 3 with what they're returning this year?
I think the part that would make it seem crazy, I don't think it's crazy, but what makes it feel maybe more of a stretch is that, like, coming back this past year, you had these, we'll call them known commodities, right? Chiefly Jalen Carter up front, where you're going, you've lost, but now you have this guy coming back, and many would say was probably the most talented, even on the previous championship winning team. And who do you have out wide? With you lose a fan favorite, we'll call it, or at least very much a household name, and a Keely Ringo out there. And so it's the quote unquote star power, which is kind of absurd given the way that Georgia has recruited. But if you look at like the anchor talents, where you look at any roster and you're going, oh my gosh, they have this guy, he's a game wrecker. They have them out there. I just don't know that we've been able to see it yet. And it's been identified. I was excited too. We won't get to see him, but Michael Williams is a guy where you look at him and just build wise, you're going, gosh, he looks like Trayvon Walker. And If that's the case, you got another guy that's even if he's close to that, what does that look like? So I don't think it's crazy. I don't. And to hear the coaches talk, and they're not quick to just shovel out praise over there. Trey Scott saying, I like this defensive front maybe as much or more than I've liked the previous two. And you're going, wow, that's a big statement. But those, it's how you play together. Like you were pointing out before, it's a team sport. So how those guys play together, they have more veteran presence now, more game time at inside linebacker coming back this year than they did going into last year. And look how they were able to perform. So there's reason to have really high hopes for this defense. It's just, who's going to be the more singular talents. We haven't identified those yet, but there's no question that they're out there.
No, it's going to be a great day. I'm looking at the weather right now, too, just to make sure we don't have a G day similar to what Auburn had to deal with last week. It's rain, Thursday, Friday, and then 80 degrees and sunny on Saturday. So it's going to be a beautiful day to be in Athens, Georgia. Make sure y'all go enjoy it. Make sure you go to Creature Comforts from 11 to 3 to come tailgate with the Players Lounge, have some drinks, have some fun. We got a bunch of former Lettermen there as well to hang out and have a good time before you head to the stadium. And with that, Stinch, man, appreciate it. Have a great call. Tell my boy Taylor hello. Taylor's going to be on the show next week, so we'll kind of break down G-Day with him next Monday, Tuesday. So be on the lookout for that one. And enjoy the call, brother.
I'll do it, man. Hit Taylor in the head for some golf chatter too. Now that Joker's up in it.
I always do. All right, that's Matt Stinchcomb. I'm Aaron Murray, and we will catch you next week on another edition of the Players Lounge.